There's like chocolate cake smeared on the floor, and I was like, oh, I can't interview Shannon with chocolate cake on the floor.
And it's just gonna be smelling like chocolate.
I know. Well, that's not a bad thing.
It's not the worst thing.
Not the worst thing in the world.
world.
I do have the best chocolate cake in the world in my fridge. I can give you a piece afterwards. Welcome, Shannon.
Thank you.
Cheers!
Cheers!
You came so far. Thank you.
It was such a far drive. I had to stop and get myself.
I know. For those who have not yet seen my interview with Shannon's husband, Dr. Andrew Whitmore, they live like a mile from us. We can walk to each other's houses. And yeah, so Shannon, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm honored that you actually got a beverage.
I did. Well, you say get a beverage, and I'm like, well, count me in.
Cheers. Because you're not a coffee drinker.
I'm not a coffee drinker. I'm not a coffee drinker. I'm not a hot beverage person.
What is this show coming to?
I know.
Your husband is a coffee
At least I brought something tasty.
True.
You brought water.
Actually, I gave him water.
He didn't even bring his own.
He did not even commit. But he did drink it out of a Christendom mug, so that was good.
Yes, I did notice that.
Yeah.
He's got to represent.
Yeah, exactly. So I've been so excited for like, what, a year now we've been talking about having you on my show.
I know.
Yes.
It's been such a long time coming, but now we're finally here.
Here we are. And you are the author of See Yourself. Let me see if I can get the title right.
I'm going to get the title right.
See Yourself as God Does.
Yeah.
And what's the subtitle?
Understanding holy body image using Catholic scripture.
Yes. This is, oh my gosh, I was so excited to read your book, and it knocked my socks off. I almost said it blew my socks off. And I was like, that's not the right, people don't say that, Stacy. It knocked my socks off because I was expecting it to be good, and I know it's a very needed topic, but it was really, 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 really good, and it's definitely a resource I will be recommending for women who come to my talks on self-image and want further resources, something I'm quite passionate about. So we have a lot to talk about, but tell us how it's going and where we can find your book.
So you can find my book at www.ascensionpress.com/see yourself as God does. And it has just been such an amazing journey. I mean, this has been something that I wanted to write for a decade. Amazing. And, motherhood kind of put everything, to the side.
As it does
but,
for a season.
Yeah, for a season. And then, it was something that I had always kind of thought about. I had already felt passionate about just how the theology of the body had impacted my own life. And I wasn't sure if I was the only person who felt that way. And then this all started when a few years ago I was invited to speak to a group of high school and college kids. And I was talking about Mary. And towards the end, one of the girls raises her hand and she's like, so this is kind of a weird question, but it's something that I've thought about and I don't really know the answer. She's like, did Mary have stretch marks? And I'm like, interesting.
Yeah.
I really want to say no because I hate stretch marks and I hate my stretch marks.
Yeah.
And I spent so much time agonizing over it. But then we ended up talking about like Mary and her Immaculate Conception and how that impacted her pregnancy, her childbirth, her body. And the more I talked about it and I kind of shared a little bit about my personal experience, you could just see the girls, they start leaning forward and they're like really taking in everything I'm saying. And I realized in that room of 30 girls, 25 of them were leaning forward, like wanting it at that moment.
Yeah.
And I remember when I was going through the whole process, the journey, I never felt like I could find a book that really spoke to me the way that I needed to be spoken to.
Absolutely.
And so,
and that begs the deeper question of, if Mary had stretch marks, were they flaws?
Yes.
And then what does God consider to be a flaw versus, a badge of honor? I've heard stretch marks described that way as a badge of honor, which I think is absolutely true. But it does, and it doesn't really matter at the end of the day, right?
And that was the conclusion that I reached. And as I was talking to the girls, I was like, this just shows that I'm still, even 10 years after having gone through an eating disorder, it's still something that's kind of always there in the background. And there's always still that temptation, to think of those things as flaws rather than just marks of an experience that I went through, that Mary went through. And in the end, it doesn't take away from your beauty. In fact, it might even add to it because it's proof of what we've done giving our bodies to our children, and they have just permanently left their mark on us. but I spent so much time dwelling on it. I was like, that's just proof that,
Yeah.
you know, it's still.
It's like the Velveteen Rabbit. You know that
Yeah.
story where he becomes loved and then all his beautiful fur, his velveteen is just in tatters. But he's been loved and been loved, and that's makes him more beautiful than he was when he was shiny and new.
Yeah, well, that's my son's teddy bear. When he got it, it was white. It was a polar bear. Now it's like this off gray, but it is so loved, and it is so beautiful to him. He used to carry it around everywhere, and
I have one of
now
those too.
I love it, and I'm in love with it because I see how much he loves it, and it has just become more and more important.
So sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have one of those too. I still have my little bear. He's gray. He used to be pink. Oh, so sweet. Oh, and so your book is really cool because not only does it have the theological side with scripture, right? But then there's also a practical side, which is an exercise at the end of every chapter.
Yes.
And you had a psychologist, I believe, contribute?
I did. So I had a psychologist. Her name is Julie Matson. So in the process, I wrote the book, but then because it's kind of theologically based, they brought in a theological editor. And then because there's, it was dealing with body image disorders and eating disorders, they did want to bring in a psychologist to review it. And so they actually brought in Julie. That was her original position, was to actually just to edit my book.
Okay.
But there had always been kind of the goal of putting practical strategies to help people.
Yes.
And so once she was done editing and kind of adding, her little pieces here and there to help, flesh out my piece, we realized that we had almost the same voice. And so rather than going out and looking somewhere else to find somebody to provide the practical applications, we're like, well, let's just ask Julie because she's already familiar.
Yeah.
It's something she's passionate about. That is her expertise.
That's
awesome. Is eating disorders, body image.
Yeah.
And so it was amazing having her contribute as well.
It's perfect because a lot of times I get asked, well, how do you go from changing your mindset from this to this? Because it is, we'll talk about this more later, but it is a physical problem. It is a problem in your mind, and your mind needs to be trained, and your habits of how you think about yourself need to be trained to. It's not just you pray your way out of this.
No, it's like a whole body. Because it's, it is spiritual, but it's also emotional. Like you have to address like what's going on in your head, what's causing these issues. Yes. And it's also physical. Like there are physical ramifications as well.
Yes.
And personally, my journey.
That practical side of things.
Yes. I never had a psychologist.
Well, yeah. Let's talk about let's talk about the moment. Actually, this is perfect because the lead-in. There's a key moment in your journey when you started to think of yourself as bad or less than, or these images or these issues rather all started for you. And as I was reading it, I was like, oh my gosh, our moment, it's similar. Our journeys are it's kind of scary how similar they are. So go ahead. I would love to hear, how did it start?
So it started with one comment in high school, and a girl called me big boned. And before that moment,
I hate that term.
Never thought about my body. I hate that term. At least now, especially, I just hear it and it makes me cringe.
Yeah.
And that's just because it was such a core moment in my journey. But before that, I had never thought about my body. I mean, people had said I was cute. They said I was pretty, but it was kind of like an all-person compliment. Like it was, it was a combination of your outfit and just the way you present yourself.
Yes.
So to have something that focused so heavily on my body was just it stopped. I stopped and I completely changed the way I looked at myself, and I really started analyzing everything about my body. It was also just very traumatic for me because I'm a very shy person. So to have the whole class, because she said that and the whole class heard it.
Oh,
so to have everybody suddenly turned and focused, and obviously, if you say something about their body, they're obviously going to be looking at your body. So it's like all of a sudden I have this classroom of 25 girls looking at me and thinking I'm big boned or questioning, is she big boned?
Yeah.
And I know that is the moment that I began to look at my body as something other than me and something that I needed to change and force into kind of what I wanted it to look like. But for a while, nothing really changed. It wasn't until I was until I was in college that I kind of got the answer, because I tried a couple. I was an athlete in high school, so I was like, all right, if I just keep exercising and working out, maybe I'll slim down and miraculously I won't be big boned again.
I'll be good enough.
Yeah, I'll be good enough. And so
whatever that means, right?
Yeah. So
there's no end goal, right?
Yeah, no, it's just good enough.
Yeah.
Because, you know, for a while I was like, I felt like I was too big, and then I was too small, and I was too this, too that, too much, too little.
Yeah.
Like, there's never anything I was really aiming towards. It was just to get more or to get less, depending.
To be better.
To be better, yeah.
And I think that's how Satan works with a lot of these things. Is this very non-specific kind of like, well, if only I were just better. And it's like, and that's the trap right there, because what does that even mean? There's no point. It's masked in the shape of like how your body looks, but at the same time it points to who you are. He attacks at who you are. If you looked this way, then you would be better. Yeah. And a lot of times I find that it's the most objectively beautiful women like you, who are, you know, very fit and very achievers, maybe people with perfectionist tendencies like I have, and who are most affected by this kind of thing. And people wouldn't expect someone who is objectively beautiful to be as hard on themselves. They would think, oh, they must be so happy because they're so beautiful. And a lot of times Satan actually uses your physical attractiveness, which is your strength, against you, right? Because you are a beautiful creation of God, and that beauty can be attractive to people and lead it towards him. And so the devil tries to twist that. He's very sneaky that way.
He is, yeah. I feel like I was able to hide for so long because I was nobody suspected anything. There was never anything I was like that was suspicious about the way that I behaved. I mean, if you saw me hiding, and when, you know, it was dark, it was midnight, like then you would realize that something was wrong. But like when people looked at me, they didn't think, it was like, you know, she's a pretty girl, she's already thin, she exercises, she seems to eat well. Yeah. So like obviously there can't be anything, you know, going on. But I think some of it is just the fact that, you know, we are a body soul union. It's our bodies and our soul. We are embodied souls. They're completely intertwined with one another. But I think the devil sometimes just whispers that like those two things are separate, and you can control one and manipulate it so that it's something other than you. Because I know the big bone comment, that's what it did for me. That was the first time I viewed my body as something other than me that could be manipulated and distorted and changed to fit something, you know, some idea of perfection. Because I am a perfectionist. Still am. I'm a recovering perfectionist. Probably always will be.
I want to share my first moment, if you don't mind, because there was several moments actually. It was kind of, I don't remember one specific one, but I remember the essence of what was happening was somebody who I respected and admired started talking badly about herself out loud in front of me and comparing herself to other women. And because I admired this person, I didn't think that I thought, oh, this is just how we talk to ourselves. Yeah. And it started to just seep into my mind that if you look this way, you are good. If you do not look this way, you are bad. And obviously, like God creates us with different body types. Some of us have larger hips or rib cages or smaller. And so a lot of times the size that you are has so much more to do with the size of your skeleton.
Yeah,
so much less to do with your actual level of fitness. But for me as a dancer, I was a ballerina. I fell in love with ballet at 14, but I had already hit puberty by that point, and my body's really good at, like, naturally good at ballet. I have great turnout and flexibility. So I was in classes with girls my own age, even though I hadn't danced for anywhere near as long as they had. But I was bigger than they were because they'd been dancing since they were 5. And so to me, that translated to, well, you're not really a good dancer. You're not really worth anything. You're not really, you know, good enough, even though you may have the skills, it doesn't matter how good you are, you're still not good enough. And I look back now, I'm like, that was 100% the work of the devil right there. Yeah. And I didn't recognize it at the time. I just thought these thoughts are true. And I didn't step outside of the thoughts. Like you said, you were stepping outside of your body, looking at your body as something other than yourself. But in reality, you need to just step outside the thoughts, right? Yeah. And learn to recognize that the thoughts are not true, even though they feel true. Right? And you're kind of looking for evidence all around you to support this theory that I'm not good enough. And so you're going to find it. But in reality, you have to fight against those thoughts. So yeah, go ahead.
So it's just those whispers. Because for the longest time, I thought it was me coming up with all those things. And but as time went on, I realized, no, this is really the devil who's, you know, whispering those thoughts in, because he knows that. He whispers at the core of, because I think the core of every woman wants to be called beautiful.
Yes.
They want to be acknowledged. You are good. You are beautiful. Like, you are loved. Like, those are the things that we all want to hear. And the devil knows exactly how to whisper his lies so that we question those core tenets that we really, really do need to believe at the very, heart of who we are as women.
I've heard them described as paradigms.
Yeah.
The paradigm that I am good and that I am lovable and that my body is good and lovable, no matter how it looks, because God has said that it is.
And that's how he made it.
Right.
Like, I remember, it wasn't until, not recently, but like probably after college that I realized that like women are built differently. Like, you were born, like what you were saying before, different women are built differently. And like, no matter how much because like, for instance, my hips are, everybody say you're going to have a great time when you give birth because you have childbearing hips. And, it really did come to it ended up helping me eventually. But, when I was young, I just kept on trying to lose weight because eventually, like, my hips will get smaller. Like, it's a bone. It doesn't, bones, not shrink like
not gonna be smaller.
It doesn't work. And it was only recently that I realized that, like, there's no just, like, cookie cutter model of, like, the perfect woman. Because we are all built differently, and we're all meant to be different because, like, we all glorify God in different ways, and we're all beautiful in different ways. And that's how he designed us. And so when we go to all of this effort to make ourselves perfect, like, according to this cookie cutter model, whether we're picking somebody else or we've got like this image in our head, we're always working against what God envisioned for us because he really does know what, he knew what he was doing when he created us.
Yes.
We might think differently, but there was devil.
Absolutely. There was always, I remember in my high school experience, I just like my skin crawls thinking about like high school, that it gets better. You're a teenager and you're watching this, it gets better.
High school is so hard. Though some of my best friends came from high school. Absolute best friends came from high school. But
That's awesome.
I think it's because we shared those experiences together that we really came together.
It was hard. And I remember there was always like one girl in my class. There was like every year there was like a different girl. And it was like, I need to be just like her. And she, for whatever reason, I would fixate on her. It was like I needed somebody to be the disciple of almost. And that sounds so weird, but it's that again is a total setup for failure because I'm never going to look like her. I'm never going to be like her 100%, nor should I. And accepting your own individuality and how God made you, I think is at the core of everything, right?
Yeah.
That's the struggle. So let's talk about why is prayer not enough in this struggle? Because you wrote that in your book, you wrote your faith life deepened. Simultaneously, your body image issues deepened, and I see this with some people. They're like, "All right, we're gonna pray our way through this, and if I were holy enough, this is again perfectionist tendencies. If I were holy enough, I wouldn't struggle with this. I would just be magically perfect. My thoughts would all be perfect." And there's this dichotomy. There's this divide. So why is prayer not enough?
So, basically prayer is just not enough because it's not a spiritual problem. Like self-image issues, eating disorders, they're not just, because we're not just spiritual beings. We have bodies too. And it's the combination of those two things that makes us human, the fact that we are a body and a soul together. And so just as the problem is both physical and emotional and mental, the healing has to be too.
Yeah.
So there will be a spiritual element because there are those lies that come from the devil. So obviously prayer is the best way to go against those lies. You turn to Jesus Christ, you turn to prayer, but that's not gonna solve everything, nor is it supposed to.
Yeah.
Like, it's not, because that was what I was told for a while, was just pray harder and it'll go away. You're just not praying hard enough, which just added to it because it's like, oh, I can't even do that good enough.
Right. You're like, oh, great.
I was like, great. Now that's another thing that I'm failing at.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Now, with that being said, too, though, like God can intervene and heal you with spiritual intervention. But the way I look at that, and tell me if this is correct or not, is that's more of a gift.
Yes.
That he intervenes at the moment, because you've written about, and I know I experience these mountaintop moments where you do, suddenly your vision becomes clearer, and then from there it's kind of a trickle down effect where you can heal. But those moments are a gift, and God wants to give them to you, but it's not like you go up to the soda machine dispenser and say like, okay, it's, prayer is not like you put in $1 and you get a soda. It's not like that where you put in prayer and then magically your body image issues go away. It doesn't quite work in that same way. And so it is a body soul, composite, basically.
Yeah. And even when, I do know, I've met women who, like, it was just like an instant, like they prayed and one day it just turned off and they never had those temptations again. I think that's rare. I think that's a special grace that some women get. It's a gift that they are given, but I don't think that's the norm. Because my experience, I never saw a psychologist. I didn't even really even call it an eating disorder until it was over. For me, I found healing in probably the place that most people say you really shouldn't find healing, because I didn't really get healing until I married my husband. And it was seeing how Andrew loved me and loved my body that I began to better appreciate how God loves me and loves my body. But I know most people would say you don't want to go find somebody else to then reflect that.
Right. It's more of looking back on it. You weren't seeking your healing in Andrew.
No, and I wasn't at all.
Not in a codependency or whatever.
No, that had never even been on my mind, but it was a combination of just Andrew loving me and honestly pregnancy had a huge impact, because it taught me the things that usually you would get probably from a nutritionist when you're working on your exercise habits, your eating. If you are diagnosed and you are working with people on a regular basis, I got while I was pregnant because I was no longer living for myself. I was living for my son, and so all of a sudden I knew I can't starve myself anymore. I can't run to punish myself. I need to have healthy eating, healthy exercise habits, because there's somebody else who depends on me. And it was because of the 10 months of having John inside of me that I realized, like, those habits formed over the course of the 9 months that I was pregnant.
Awesome.
And so by the time he was born, they had become so ingrained in just my daily life that they really were habits that I had formed and that I was able to continue even after the fact.
Yeah, that's so cool. I think pregnancy also is another area in which our journeys are very similar, because pregnancy also, I think, healed me in a deeper way than I expected. Because my body the whole time could do this amazing thing, could grow another person. And I had been treating it my whole life as something nice to look at.
Yeah.
As an instrument for performance, basically, which literally performance, because I was a Broadway touring performer and I went to audition after audition in New York. You're judged by your looks, and I was judging myself by my looks. And so my body wasn't just for show, literally. It was this function that it could perform of building another person. Was like, oh my gosh, I've been able to do this the whole time. If I had known, like, I knew, of course, you know what pregnancy is when you're in high school, but if I had known what I could do and make these incredible little people in cooperation with God and my husband, I would have respected my body so much more at the time. Like, it's absolutely wild. It's absolutely miraculous. It doesn't, like, don't just blow past that. Like, this is like incredible what your body can do. Like, this is the fact that it can do this and was given this function.
Yeah.
We gotta meditate on that. And with that being said, too, it's interesting. We all have different journeys, right? You and I have very similar journeys in many ways, but I think it's interesting, too, that a lot of times the devil actually will use motherhood against a lot of women. So a lot of times for women, their body image issues actually start when they become a mom. Because maybe they were, really fit and, small before they had their children. And then after they've got stretch marks, it's harder to find time to exercise, and sometimes losing the baby weight doesn't happen very fast. And so that can lead to self-image issues. So, if you're watching this and you are in that boat, like, there's a whole, it's okay. I don't know. I guess I just want to say it's okay.
It's like, okay.
Whatever your journey is, it's okay. This was a high school issue. For me, it was college and beyond college, as well as high school. And if you're in your 30s or 40s or whatever, and things are just starting now, like, it's okay to be wherever you are.
I say everybody has a very different journey. And no matter how old you are, women want to know that they're beautiful. They want to know that they're good, that their bodies are good. And it doesn't matter how old or young you are. And also, I didn't realize until I was older just how much of a role hormones have with, like, your life as a woman. Like, from the moment you hit puberty all the way through menopause, your life and your body is constantly changing because of the flow of the hormones in your body.
It's exhausting.
And I thought that was something that was purely, like, puberty, and then they kind of, like, died for a while, and you settled into your routine. And then you got pregnant, and again, you kind of got this moment. Then you hit menopause. But it's literally, like, all the time.
All the time.
There's just, like, this roller coaster of, and it changes the way your body is flowing. all of a sudden my body feels heavy, and I'm like, oh, it's just that time.
Literally every month. It's like there's like 2 days, and it's like, oh, I look awful. And then I finally, after about 2 days, I figure out, no, I'm just PMSing. I'll be fine another day. It's okay. Let me. I'm going to. Let's see. I want to pull up a Bible verse here because you have a lot of biblical references. Draw your strength from the Lord and from his mighty power. Put on the armor of God so that you may be able to stand firm against the tactics of the devil. For our struggle is not with flesh and blood, but with the principalities, with the powers, with the world rulers of this present darkness, with the evil spirits in the heavens. Therefore, put on the armor of God that you may be able to resist on the evil day, and having done everything, to hold your ground. So stand fast with your loins girded in truth, clothed with righteousness as a breastplate, and your feet shod in readiness for the gospel of peace. In all circumstances, hold faith as a shield to quench all the flaming arrows of the evil one, and take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God. I love that.
I love that.
Yeah. So the soldier imagery is awesome.
I love soldier. I don't know if it was because I was in charge of confirmation for so many years, and there's such a focus on soldiers. But it's just, it was the motivation for keeping me, when I was when I had the eating disorder, keeping me in control. But since then, I feel like God has redeemed the imagery and brought it kind of more to where St. Paul is, how he refers to it. Because I've always viewed myself as a soldier.
Yes, so tell us about the paradigm shift. You're fighting, when you had the eating disorder, you're fighting the wrong battle. But you were still looking at yourself as a soldier.
I completely looked. I remember I would wake up and I'd be like, I'm going to put on my armor. I'm going to put on my running clothes. I'm going to run these miles. And I'm going to, need my armor for when I go to the party later so that I'm not going to binge on food. And just everything was, because it made me feel strong.
Yeah.
And I guess that's really, and I was so desperate for control that I think that kind of just fed into it, and that was the motivation that I used in order to continue and to, hold on to that control.
Food is the enemy. My body is the enemy.
The world is the enemy. Yes. All of the pretty girls are the enemy because they make me question myself. Everything's the enemy, and I am the lone soldier who is fighting against all of those things.
There's like a moral. It sounds like the morality of food became something you could it's hard because we have people really good Catholics who swear by paleo diet and some who are seeking to eat all organic, and then there's lots of different paradigms around food. For the person with body image anxiety or a tendency toward these kinds of things, it can become a moral equivalent where I know that my moral compass was basically like, how much did I eat today?
Yes.
And what did I eat today? If I ate chocolate cake, that's bad. If I ate a salad, that's good. As long as it didn't have croutons on it. It was like this, seriously, it was this keeping score. And like you said, it was about.
Yeah. That was my daily life, was just like, all right, how many good foods, how many bad foods, do they kind of cancel each other out? Do I need to add extra in order to kind of balance things out?
Yeah.
And it's still it's definitely a paradigm that it's hard to break out of, because I even find with my kids, I have to remind myself, no, it's okay if we have ice cream for dessert. Ice cream is not a bad food. Ice cream, in fact, is a very, very good food. It's
yes.
All of these things were given either to nourish us, and we can take pleasure in food. And that was one of the things that I really needed to kind of latch onto in my healing process was, food is not just there for us to consume, to keep us alive.
Yeah.
There's a reason why we gather around tables, and that is the center of, of family life even, is, having meals and when I go home to my parents, there's a batch of freshly baked cookies sitting there waiting to be consumed.
Yeah.
And we will sit around that table, all night just eating and talking, because it's a social thing. Food is also meant to be a social thing. So you can enjoy things, and it doesn't have to serve this utilitarian purpose.
Yes.
It could actually be something that we take pleasure in. And now I try to remember that, especially when I take my daughter out, it's let's go get ice cream, and we're going to enjoy this. I'm going to enjoy this moment. I'm going to enjoy the flavor. I'm going to eat it mindfully. that like, you know, we are having this experience together, and it doesn't need to serve a purpose beyond that. It doesn't have to be, you know, even if they're empty calories, they're never empty because I'm being filled with something.
Yeah. Your husband's interview was so good. He talked about virtue being the mean between two extremes. So on the one hand, we've got, you know, food is fuel and nothing else. And then on the other hand, we've got the other extreme would be food is comfort, and I need food in order to feel good. And I know that I had both of those.
I go both ways, depending on how I felt.
Yes. If I had a bad day, binge, you know, and then, you know, you go back the other way the next day where it's like, no, I'm taking up my arms again. I'm going to go exercise for 2 hours before I go to a dance rehearsal that's 6 hours long. And so we've got kind of these two extremes. And what I realized in my journey was that when I was happiest, when I was more focused on people than on food and on relationships and who was actually sitting around the table with me, I was so much happier. Yeah. And I noticed like at weddings, I would barely eat anything because I was so excited. Yeah. And I was seeing all my, in many cases, my college friends. I was really catching up with people. And then the whole night went by and I realized I didn't even finish my plate of food because I wasn't even looking at it. I never went and got like a piece of cake from the table because I was dancing. And I started to notice like, oh, like I felt filled in one way, and so I didn't need to overeat or even think about food. The freedom of not thinking about food was amazing. And so I started to realize that what I really needed to chase was deeper, fulfilling relationships. Of course, relationships are hard. You can't always have like perfect peace in all of your relationships, right? There's going to be moments of tension, and so it takes two to tango, right? Yeah. It's not something you can control, but if you pursue those deeper relationships, especially with the Lord, and you allow those to fill you, the secondary result of that is that you're just not going to think about food as much. Yeah. And it's going to be in its proper order, where it's something you enjoy, but it's not something that's at the top of your mind and you're obsessing about it all the time.
Yeah, I feel like the whole time that I was struggling, I was always thinking about myself. Like, not to say that I was like very selfish, but like I felt very selfish. Yes. Because all I was thinking about was myself, how everything was affecting me. Yes. And it was all like very me oriented. And I feel like since recovering, a lot of it has just been because like my life has become very other oriented. Yeah. And that's, you know, it's the relationships, it's, you know, it's marriage and family, but it's also service. Like I remember when I don't think it's a coincidence that when I was at my worst was when I had the most amount of free time to just like think about it. Because I would spend time either
to control, right?
Yeah, because then I could be analyzing everything, your workouts and I can figure it all out, and I can make sure I can figure out how to make this a perfect day. I had all of this free time to do that. But you know, you don't have a ton of free time when you know you're married with kids and working and volunteering.
You're just eating the mac and cheese. You're like, this is not the perfect meal right now. Chicken nuggets, mac and cheese, but we're gonna eat a little bit of it because that's all we have time for, and then we're gonna move on because
you can't focus on all of it. And that's okay.
And that's great.
I feel better when I'm thinking about other people and thinking about, you know, just like what's going on in my daily life. Yeah. And so like I feel like I'm less selfish as a result of, you know, having gone through this experience
100%.
Having recovered and, you know, encountered the freedom that comes with, you know, recovery.
Yeah, I think one of the most hopeful things that I could tell people about finding a vocation, this is like separate but also related, is that losing yourself, not in like I'm never gonna have a minute to myself anymore kind of thing, but when your heart and your mind are focused more on other people than yourself, the side effects of that are healing for you. And that is absolutely true for me. Having my children keeps me so busy. I am like, my arms are so toned from carrying my babies. I run around with them at the park. A lot of the reason that I do work out, and I do make time to work out, and I work out while holding my baby. I actually have released some videos on YouTube of me working out
with kids,
with my baby. Yeah, take them on walks, and a lot of that is it's healing for me, you know, because I see them watching me and I have a much deeper why. And I know it's very scary as a young person. For me, it was always so scary to imagine my me time getting cut way down. I used to do 2-hour workouts every day, and it was punishing, honestly. Yeah. I was fighting the wrong battle, like you. I was a soldier fighting the wrong battle. And I definitely experienced that with the reduction of my personal time. I look better and I feel better somehow than when I had time for these 2-hour workouts. You know, it's insane.
It is.
It's surprising.
I remember when I briefly discerned the religious life, and I spent about 8 months in the convent. And in that time, part of the reason why I thought that I had to be called to the religious life and not marriage was because I couldn't envision giving up that much of my time to children and chasing kids around, and because you know, we had a very structured life, but there was time for exercise, and I was able to go down every evening and work out, and I was able to monitor what I was eating and eat really healthy, and you know, avoid, you know, as much as I could. But I really thought that I couldn't possibly be called to marriage because that would just be too hard to maintain the life that I feel like I need. And it wasn't until I kind of let go of that and let go of, you know, everything that came with the religious life, and you know, ended up getting married, that I realized, like, no, this has been so freeing. Because like, I do still work out, and now Felicity will be like, oh, I'm gonna work out with Mama. Yay! And she'll go and she'll drag her we have one of those mats in front of the sink in the kitchen, so she drags it over as her like yoga mat. And she sits there and she does the workouts with me. And it's
a little exercise mat.
She has her little exercise mat, so she's so like my little partner, and eventually she'll be like, I'm just tired, I'm gonna watch you. And then she'll just sit there. So like,
mine do the same
everything
thing.
changes when you have, especially a girl, because like now I'm thinking about everything I say, and I'm thinking about everything I do, because I don't want her to ever think that she's not enough. And I want her to know that, like, you know, it's good to exercise, it's good to eat healthy, but it's also good to enjoy the chocolate cake on occasion. And it's good to have, you know, all these different occasions. Like, sometimes you have to sacrifice and work out for some greater good, and that's okay. We always should be, you know, moving towards the greater good and pursuing that. And sometimes that means giving up the workout for the day. That used to be like agonizing. Like, I couldn't even envision giving it up. I'd have to, like, I would stay up late. I would do whatever was necessary in order to make sure that it was not sacrificed. But now I'm like, no, I feel free to do that and to not have the, you know, that guilt kind of sitting on top of me.
Because your body's something to be taken care of. And so if your body needs rest rather than a workout, give your body what it needs. It's about looking at your body as a gift. Which actually ties in beautifully to this quote. I really wanted to read this during the course of the interview. This is from your book. Do you want to read it? Just this first part?
Sure.
Okay.
I wanted my body to cooperate with my desires. I wanted it to be able to run for miles without tiring. I wanted it to move without jiggling. I wanted my body to be slim and toned and smooth. I wanted it to never feel hunger, to never need sustenance. I wanted it to be satisfied with only the smallest of meals and to never be tempted to eat anything except what was necessary for survival. I demanded so much of my body, but whenever I saw myself, I could only count the ways I had fallen short. The thick thighs that touched, the arm flab that seemed to hang from my bones, the curve of my abdomen. I was too much and not enough at the same time.
Yeah, I really resonated with that very deeply. Too much and not enough at the same time. It's so true. I mean, it's like, makes me feel so sad to think that is how I felt for so many years. And I get this question a lot. Like, I felt like I was in a very, very visceral way, kind of my skin would crawl when I thought about like how much I hated myself. And so so in your book, you talked about the sacrament of the body and how it helped you restore communion with yourself. So can you break that down for us? Because this is huge.
So this was entertaining the idea that my body was a sacrament was probably one of the most life-changing things that I gathered from my time at the John Paul II Institute. So that's something that John Paul II talks about in his theology of the body, the idea that our body is a sacrament of the person. So if you think of just the sacraments in the church, you know, it's an outward sign of an invisible reality. So it's something that makes it present. So, you know, when you are washed in the waters of baptism, your sins are actually forgiven. You know, the water physically is being poured on you, but there's a spiritual reality that you cannot see that is being made present through the water. You know, we take olive oil that's been blessed, and it actually can make, you know, it can confirm you in the Holy Spirit. It can make a priest. It can heal. You know, we take bread and wine, and it becomes Jesus' body and blood. These are all outward signs of something that we cannot see. And the body is a sacrament as well, because it makes the person present. You can't see our souls. We are body and soul together as a union, and our soul is invisible. It's, it's spiritual. It cannot be seen. It cannot be touched. But our body makes it present. And that's why, everything is communicated through our bodies. We use body language. It's not just what we say, it's how we say it. Yes. So much of it comes through. It allows us to experience everything. That's how we experience everything
that we experience.
Which is one of the most beautiful things about Catholicism, because it recognizes that we are, sensual beings. We experience life through the senses, which is why, we go into a church and there's incense and bells and, taste and all those things. It fills all of our senses up, because that's how we experience the world, and that's how we're experienced. Experience, it goes both ways. We take in things, but we are also taken in by other people through our bodies, because it's our bodies that allow us to do that, to express ourselves, to express our innermost desires, to, everything as simple as, smiling and hugging. All of those communicate something that goes much deeper than the actual physical. But it reminds us that our bodies are ours. We are our bodies. It's not just something that we have, it's something that we are. They're so intimately connected that you just can't separate them. They're not something that you can take out and kind of view as something other than yourself. Yeah. We're not fully human. Even when after we die and our bodies are here and our souls go to heaven, we will not be complete until the resurrection of the body, because we need our bodies to be fully human. And the body that we get at the end of time is going to be the body we have now. It'll be different. It'll be perfected. It will be, it'll be different, but it'll be ours. It'll be the one that God created, because He created it for that entire journey, not just for the beginning. But I think we kind of forget the fact that our body it's part of who we are, and it's central to our being human, and it's something that we are going to have forever. It's not just this temporary thing that we're gonna we can lose eventually.
Yeah, and the God of the universe, who created everything, who is omnipotent, omnipresent, everything, considers our bodies worthy of being united to Him in Holy Communion.
Yeah.
That's huge. He took on a body, but it's not well, Jesus had the perfect body, but I am dirty, I am awful. His body wanted to be united with ours. And it is in Holy Communion. The substance of His body is coming into ours, and that's why He came down from heaven. We are heaven for Him to be united. When we are united with Him, that is heaven for Him.
Yeah, we are drawn into His body, which obviously means He can't have a problem with it if this was always, and that was always the plan. When God created us, we were made in the image of the invisible God, but we were made in the image of Christ, who is God made man. Yeah. So obviously God can't have a problem with bodies, because the second person of the Trinity actually became man, took on a body, and He kept that body even. Mary kept her body. That was always kind of the end goal. And it's just a beautiful reminder that at its core, sin obviously has had, as we all know, has had its impact, but at its core, the body was created good. Yeah. It was created as something that, that's who we are, and God went so far as to become man Himself to make sure that we realize that it's good. It is very good.
It's very good. I know from my journey, and I encounter this a lot, there's that feeling of, but I just don't feel like I am good, right?
Yeah.
crossing that bridge into, I know this intellectually, but I struggle to accept it. You've talked about surrender. Maybe we need to pause the camera again in a second. This is silly how this works with my camera. If you want to become a member of my Patreon community and fund a better camera, then I don't have to pause every 12 and a half minutes. But let's just real quick before I have to pause, let's talk about surrender in relation to this entire journey, because it's changing how you feel and how you think about yourself. There's the intellectual piece, there's the physical piece of healing through psychological intervention. There's also a prayer component, but that's also, like we said, we can't rely on that to be the one thing that's going to heal us.
Yeah.
And then there's surrender. That's part of the spiritual component, I think. And it's kind of like AA, right? Alcoholics Anonymous. The process of actually giving up. So how did that go for you? What was that surrender piece?
So I feel like surrender has always been a big, because I feel like surrender is the opposite of pride. Like so much of my eating disorder and my issues were all about pride
and control, right?
Because I thought I knew better, and I thought what I was doing was better. And so much of healing, and so much of my life in general, with anything has been, I just need to surrender, because there's somebody who knows better than I do what I need and what is going to make me happy and what is going to fulfill me. Yeah. So like a lot of my journey has been surrender, because I'm just a very anxious person, so I like to try to be in control, which was
you never know that about you. I've known you for almost 4 years now.
I'm a really type A person, and I like control, and that's why I take charge of everything, because
we all love it. We're like, Shannon, will you just organize this for our group? And she's like, I will. And she does a great job with it.
Yes, I like being in control, which in some ways it's good. Somebody needs to be the leader, and I am happy to take that role.
You are.
But in other places, like it has become it's an issue, because some of it is driven by anxiety. Because I need to be in control, and I need to hold on to these things. I need to do these things myself, because I don't trust anybody else to do them. And sometimes that's other people. I don't trust other people to do this. Yeah. And sometimes it's God. I don't trust God to take care of this. And so I have to take care of it myself.
Yeah.
And so much of my healing has just been letting go and letting God work as He needs to in my life at different places. And sometimes that really just meant waiting to see how God is going to work. And sometimes it meant, if I would get those thoughts, I'd have to say, no, those are not from God, those are from the devil. I give those over, I let them go. They are not, He does not have the final word.
Yes.
Like He did not win. God has already won, and now I need to let that play out in my life. And if that means surrendering even when I don't feel like it, when I would rather listen to the lies, because those are the lies that I've heard for so long and I'm so used to it, and they sound like my voice almost.
And they're kind of addictive.
Because, there were times where, like, I liked the feel of control. I liked, after a really intense workout, stepping on the scale and being like, yeah, I did exactly what I wanted to do. And, if I would starve myself, I felt in control, and I would get that high. Yeah. And I would like that. And sometimes I liked the way that it felt.
Sometimes we like our cage.
We do. Yeah, there were plenty of times where I'm like, I like... I would get excited when somebody would compliment me on the street, like the cat calls, and like, it was an affirmation that what I was doing was right. Yeah. That's how I saw it.
That somebody else is recognizing.
Somebody else
I worked so hard for this, and I am now pleasing to everyone, and I'm getting that recognition. Yeah, it's actually really scary to come out of your box of control and allow yourself to experience something much wider, because it does become a bit comforting to have those parameters. I noticed that with myself as well. The thoughts, the negative thoughts, the lies were very addictive after a time, because that's what I knew. Yeah. And I almost couldn't imagine a life outside of the one that I had built for myself, because it was so, relationships were scary. I mean, I had a lot of friends. I had boyfriends. It's not that I was like hiding in my room away from people, not at all. But to be vulnerable to people was so scary. Yeah. And as long as I could keep people and things and issues separate, it was safer that way. And I could do that by making sure that I got in my 2-hour workout every morning and had a salad for lunch every single day. And I had a snack of carrots with barbecue sauce. I don't know why. I would dip them in barbecue sauce or honey mustard. And I'd be like thinking about, I was like so hungry after my workout, but I was like, I've got to get to 11 o'clock and then I'll have my carrots with barbecue sauce. I don't know why I did that. That's so weird. I know, it's weird. It's weird. And then I'd have an apple for a snack, and I had a diet soda every afternoon. And it was like I had these points throughout the day, and I was so locked into them that, like, if somebody had a birthday and they were going out to celebrate, or someone was having a party or whatever, I would turn down the invitation because I had to maintain control. I would just go to bed, and I'd be so hungry, I'd say, I can't come, I need to go to sleep, and I would just fall asleep because I was so tired. Yeah. And it interfered, it cut off my ability to be vulnerable and to be seen. And really at the heart of it, if you're going to be in any vocation, if you're going to reach spiritual maturity, you have to be able to be vulnerable with God. And that surrender part, saying, God, how do you see me? Will you show me how you see me, is key. It's so scary. It's so hard. And I promise, like, if you're watching this, and I'm guessing the people who are watching this and click on this are going to be the ones who need to hear this message. What's waiting for you is love and mercy and the ultimate goodness that you couldn't even find anything in the world to compare to. Like, God's not going to say, oh, good, you came out of your shell. Now you're showing yourself to me so I can smack you down.
Yeah.
No, it's, I've been waiting for you, and my heart is yours. Like, my whole heart is for you. Everything that I created in this world is for your enjoyment. Like, I want you to be happy. Like, a great analogy, I think, is like when I take my daughter out for ice cream. Like you talked about taking your daughter.
I love ice cream.
I love ice cream too. And we have these great little like ice cream stands near us here in Stephen City, Virginia. And it's wonderful to take your children out for ice cream. I don't want my little daughter to be obsessing about how many calories. Like, that's like actually one of the saddest things I can imagine is one of my daughters to be obsessing about how many calories are in this thing that she's eating, and to be thinking about that. I want her to be enjoying the beautiful day outside and the sunset, and talking to me about whatever is on her heart and not worrying about it, because I think she's just gorgeous.
Yeah.
And I think that about both my daughters and my sons as well. That's how our Heavenly Father sees us. And that's huge. Like, you have to be willing to take that first step out of your cage and say, show yourself to me. Please show me who you are, and show me who I am in relationship to you. And in that beautiful union is that beautiful moment of allowing your armor to come down and letting God show you. And then eventually you'll be fighting the right battle. And he'll show you, these thoughts, these are not from me. These are from the enemy. This is not what I want you to be saying to yourself. Especially because your body really is, it's a gift, right?
Yeah.
It's a gift. But that hiding, okay, so actually this ties into another thing I wanted to ask you about. Original sin, it really ties back to that. So give us kind of, you in your book, you focused a lot on the biblical text in Genesis about original sin and about how Adam and Eve hid.
Yeah. I love the fact. So I think of my kids, because like especially when Felicity was younger, she used to have like the little ponytail that would come out and stick out. And we would play hide and seek, and she would go and hide, and you could always find where she was because her ponytail would stick out. So she was always like, she was hiding. Aww. She was really trying to hide, but she was never very good at it because I'm her mother, and I would recognize her ponytail anywhere.
Yes.
But like, I feel like that's kind of like everybody's experience with God. It's like we all try to hide, and Adam and Eve tried to hide. Like, even when God asked, where are you? Like, he knew where they were. He was giving them the opportunity to kind of step forward. But, we all hide because we're ashamed, and it's better to hide in the darkness. We think it's better to hide in the darkness than to step out into the light, because that means that we have acknowledged. Like, yes, I had an eating disorder. I had body image issues. But like, there was also a sense where like there was sinfulness in that. Like when I was making those decisions against my body, there was sin, and so I was ashamed. And it was appropriate that I would feel that way. But I was too afraid to kind of step out and acknowledge, because I was too prideful and I was too afraid to acknowledge the fact that like I had done something wrong and I needed to take responsibility for what I had done. But Adam and Eve, they hid because they were ashamed of what they did, and they knew as soon as that sin was committed, everything shifted, because Adam and Eve, like that body-soul unity, that was broken. The relationship between Adam and Eve was broken. The relationship between Adam and Eve and the world was broken. And we see how that plays out, because we can feel inside like those tugs in different directions, whether it's the whispers telling us that we're not good enough, we're not beautiful enough, like our bodies and our souls don't seem to match up properly. You can see it in the way that we interact with women and men with men, but also men and women together. And we can see it with the world, the way we interact with the world. I always thought the world and food was the enemy. Like I always thought those were the enemies. Whereas now I realize that they were never the enemy. They're just as good as I am, because they were all like, food was created by God, the world was created by God. It was created as a gift given to us to be experienced and enjoyed and taken care of. But instead, sin kind of came in and it distorted everything about what that original vision was that God had for both our bodies and for our relationships. And so when that breaking takes place, our instant response is to hide because we don't want to acknowledge, and I hid so much. But it's only when you kind of step out into the light, when you take that first step, and it is scary. It's because vulnerability is a scary thing. And that first step when I first admitted to everybody that I had an eating disorder, it was really, really, it was a huge step for me. Like, it required a lot of vulnerability. There were a lot of people who approached me and were like, I never knew, I had no idea. But there were also a lot of people who were like, well, I would have never guessed. It makes me feel comfortable to know that like there are other people out there like me who have been able to hide like you did, because you spent so long hiding, nobody recognized, and I'm in the same kind of position. Nobody knows what's going on in my soul right now, but I can completely identify with what you're experiencing because I've hid and I'm done. I'm tired of hiding. It's just, I'm scared to make the step, but I see what you've done, and that's why I wrote the book. It was really to share my own experience, but also to give people the courage that they need to take that first step out.
And I bet nobody's came to you and was like, oh, you're dead to me now.
No.
No. If anything, vulnerability engenders vulnerability, and it calls that out of other people, which is something that I love so much about God's plan for our struggles and even our sin. St. Paul says he rejoices in his sin because it really truly does call that out of other people, and it leads to other people healing, and it inspires other people to take those steps towards healing, which is beautiful. You also wrote in your book about how your children kind of intentionally hide badly sometimes, which I love. I love that so much. It made me laugh because my kids do the same thing where they're like, I'm up here.
Oh yeah.
And like there's part of our hearts that just like we can't kill that desire to be seen. No. Like when we hide from God, we're playing hide and seek, but like we want to be found. We're not hiding because we don't really want him to look at us. We really do want to be seen. You can't kill that part of your heart. You can't kill that part of your soul, no matter how hard you try.
You can try really, really hard, but it's not going to work. It cannot go away.
Yeah, and so as much as you try to soldier up and put your armor on, the stronger thing to do is to step out and be seen. How does God see our bodies, and why is it really important for us to step out and instead of telling him how we see our bodies, ask him for input on that on that viewpoint?
So God sees, so everything we have, everything that we are, it's all we've been given. Like, we are not responsible for anything. Anything, it's all been given to us as a gift.
You mean we're not responsible for anything? Like
we are not the creator of anything.
I just want to clarify that. Obviously, we are responsible
for plenty, but for our own existence, we did not bring ourselves into existence. We did not create our own bodies. I mean, we as women and men also, we have the ability to cooperate in that creation when we become mothers and fathers. But at the core, we do not bring ourselves into existence. So it is our very life, our bodies, our soul, everything is given to us as a gift. And so, like any gift, as the receiver, we can receive it in many different ways. And so, if you receive a gift well, you cherish it, you take care of it, you might put it up somewhere where it won't get broken. You're going to take care, you're going to treat it the way that's meant to be treated. Yes. So like if it's a toy, you're going to play with it. If it's a food, you're going to eat it. If it's something breakable, you're going to put it to be admired. If it's a photo, it's going to go on on a wall. You're going to do with it what it is meant to do, what its actual end, what its purpose is for existing. And by doing that, you're actually showing it respect. You're in a sense loving it. You're
and respecting the person who gave it to you.
Yes. So that's key. So when you if you just think just in general, if you give a gift and you when your kids are young, you can give them a certain amount of freedom and so
work in progress.
Yes.
We both have little children. It's like,
there have been times where we've given my son something and he hasn't liked it and he's tossed it.
Yeah.
And I know he at the time he was only 2 or whatever.
Yeah.
But it still hurt. that he rejected my gift. Like, to be rejected hurts.
What about even, I mean, this is so relevant to our current conversation about self-image. When somebody gives you a compliment, or you give someone a compliment and they're like, no.
That hurts too.
It actually is disrespectful to reject the compliment unless it was given insincerely. If you compliment someone on their looks and they're like, no. That's rejecting the gift of the compliment. It's
people think that's humble.
Yeah.
But it's not. Because God has given you, like, if you are, complimented on your hair or on anything, that has been given to you as a gift. And so the humble response is to acknowledge it for what it is.
Yeah.
So the right answer is gratitude. It's to say thank you.
Yeah.
It's not to push off what God has given you, because that's not true humility.
Mm-hmm. And to say thank you and to say that's very kind of you. That's really kind of you to point that out.
Yeah.
Like, that's so sweet of you to say so. Like, that's such a better way to receive the gift, is to actually like give a compliment back and to say your kindness is appreciated. And same is true with God, with our bodies.
Yeah. So for one, the way we receive it, the way we treat it, reflects back what we think of the person who gave it.
Yes.
And also affects the person who gave it. So God is God, so it doesn't work the same way as like when a person is given a gift. But he wants you to treat the things that you've been given the way that they deserve to be treated. And that includes our bodies. Like, our bodies they have a right. They deserve to be treated with respect and love.
Which means nourishing.
Which means taking care of it,
but
nourishing
not binging.
it. Yes.
Right? It's that mean between two extremes.
Finding the mean and treating it with the dignity that it demands as a gift from God.
Yeah.
And I think it was rediscovering that idea, just the idea that like our body is a gift. It's something that has been given to us. And that applies to everybody, regardless of what their circumstances in life are. Like, our body is always a gift, and it deserves to be treated, because that's the appropriate response. And that's also our way of showing gratitude.
Yeah.
Because that shows that we are thankful.
Like, you didn't do a good job here. You should have made me with smaller bones. Like, if my child did that, for me, if I made a doll, gave it to my child, and she goes, well, you should have made it differently. I'd be like, are you kidding me? I put my heart and soul into that. That was my...
Which God did. He literally breathed his life into us because he liked he created it and he saw it was good. He liked it the way it was.
And we're going to turn around and be like, no, I know better. That's actually incredibly disrespectful.
It's hurtful.
And of course it is, but at the same time, if someone's listening to this and they're in the midst of their eating disorder and they emotionally feel this way, I don't want you to feel like, oh my gosh, now I'm, I don't want to add.
Yeah, don't see it as a further burden to be placed.
Exactly. It's
an invitation to change the way that you think.
An invitation to, even if you don't feel grateful for your body right now, to just begin. This is what I do when this actually works for many different things in life. If you're just even feeling stressed about anything separate from body image, just to begin to thank God out loud for the things that you have and the things that He has placed, the people He's placed in your life, the circumstances that are working. And also everything about yourself, even the things that you don't love. Just to say, I have legs that work, I have hands that function. Not everybody has those. I have eyes that work and ears that work. Thank you for those. And I'm kind of getting chills even now just mentioning those things. Like, the fact that you work is a miracle, regardless of how it looks. And to have it does take humility, actually, to acknowledge the gift of that. But there's a beautiful truth in it, and I think that's a pretty good way to just start to feel better immediately. And it's not just about you feeling better, but about aligning your mental state with the reality, the larger reality that you are good, you are lovable, and you are a gift. So what is freedom from your eating disorder? What does that look like for you now?
So it looks like a lot of things. I mean, so it's in some things it's just like I no longer feel imprisoned to like the need to work out. It's not I used to be afraid when I would go home to my parents, because my parents would always have freshly baked whatever and like a whole assortment of them.
I love freshly baked whatever.
I do too.
Delicious.
But I kept telling myself I didn't, because it was like I was afraid. I was literally afraid of it. Yeah. And I'd have to be like consciously like aware of everything. Like, I couldn't look at it. I couldn't like dwell on it too long, because I was afraid of what I was going to do when, like when the lights turned out and everybody went to bed, and was I going to find myself in the kitchen again?
Yeah.
And it was like, so in some ways freedom has just been like, I can look at food and not be afraid anymore.
Yeah.
And it's like, I can really appreciate, these things for what they are. It means being able to wear pretty clothes and not have to worry about how they look, and encouraging my daughter to wear pretty clothes, and she will not wear anything but dresses. And I just love it because she's really just, her femininity is shining through like the very center of who she is.
Yeah.
And just like being able to do that and not be constantly thinking about how it makes me look, and then being able to sacrifice some things for greater goods. Like, I don't have to work out every day. If we're gonna have a play date, like I would rather be at the play date.
Yeah.
And there was a time where I didn't think that would ever be true, that I would ever want to actually be somewhere other than doing what I felt like I needed to be doing.
Yeah.
But now I feel like I'm finally free to say yes to all of these different things. Like, I used to have to say no to so many things because I was comfortable in my box, and I was terrified of what it would look like to step out of it.
Yeah.
And now that I've stepped out of the box, and it's like, there's just so much freedom in being able to say yes to so many different things, and to enjoy and not to feel guilty, and to just...
And guess what? You didn't get fat.
I know!
I feel the same way.
I was terrified that I was going to gain all this weight because I wasn't going to be,
like, if I don't do this every day, I'm going to be fat, and then I cannot be happy.
But you know what? Not only am I not fat, but I have a whole lot more energy now. Like, I feel better in my body.
Better.
I sleep better. I'm just everything. Like, everybody is. I get more compliments now than I did even then because I'm happier.
Yeah.
And it kind of just like shines through in a way that I was just too tired for it to really do when I was like in the midst of it.
Yeah. And when you do start to get well and seek wholeness, you may gain some weight because your body's finally like, oh my gosh, thank God. Calories, like we've been needing this, I've been needing this, I've been wanting this. Like, so you may gain weight initially, but it's going to even out in the long run. And it's the more important thing is to heal yourself mentally. And then the trickle down effect of that will be this better, more whole person, right?
Yeah,
and happier. It's just happier.
It's more holistic.
You deserve that.
You do deserve. Everybody deserves that.
Because God said that you do. Like, God wants you to be happy, and He doesn't want you to be stuck in this cage. And this is what God wants this freedom for you. And the devil wants the opposite. And like, who are you going to listen to? Like, who do you trust more? Really, I trusted the devil more, honestly, because of the lies, and they were, so addictive.
But now I realize it was a mistake, and there's one person who really knows what I need and what will make me happiest, and that's gone.
Yeah, and there's a better life waiting on the other side. It's just, there is.
Yeah,
I needed, when I was in the midst and the depths of the hellish reality that I had created for myself, there was one friend who was a very good guy friend, and he said, Stacey, I thought you actually looked better before you lost all that weight, because I lost weight very suddenly and I got a lot of validation, and so then the cage closed in, because it was like, oh, now she's super skinny, and she, we're all jealous of her. And so if I were to ever not have that body again, I thought, I'm going to lose all these people who are now paying attention to me are going to leave. Yeah. And then when I finally started getting well and my body did gain some weight, I needed that memory of that really good friend who in the midst of all of it said to me, I really think you looked great before you lost that weight. Because guess what? All of those people did go away. And now I look back 10 years later and I'm like, they were superficial friends anyway.
No, your really good friends are not going to leave regardless of if you weigh more, if you weigh less.
Yep. And that friend came to my wedding. We're still in touch. The people who really love you they're gonna be there and they're gonna rally around you. And only the people who wanted something superficial anyway are gonna kind of fall away. So at the end of each chapter, there is a practical application, which I love. We talked about this at the beginning of the interview. I love making it practical because it's like, yes, there's all these thoughts and all this theology and whatever, but like, how do I actually change my daily habits? Yeah. So Julie Mattson at the end of every chapter has a practical strategy for aligning your thoughts and your reality with the way that God sees you. So can you just share whichever one of those was your favorite?
Yes, I was so grateful because she just did such a wonderful job of making it practical. And that was an element in my healing journey that was definitely lacking because I didn't see a psychologist. And so I didn't really get a lot of those practical applications. It was kind of just stuff that I stumbled upon in my journey. But it was so valuable having her, working with her. And my favorite was definitely chapter 2. She invites you to write 2 letters. One is a letter from you to God. And you can really go, you're just getting at the core of how you feel about your body, about, your relationship with it, with your relationship with the world. You just be completely honest and vulnerable and just opening up. And then writing a second letter, which is God to you and how you think God really feels about you. And to see how those 2 compare. And, one, I love it because I love to write. I mean, I'm a huge journaler, and so that has always been kind of my way of processing things, is to write them down. And I've always just loved, I remember when I was in high school, you'd always get those letters, love letters from God, and I was responsible for writing them when I became a youth minister. And those, they were always so touching because there was truth in them that I just couldn't see from where I was standing. And then, but there were times where I would read them and I really feel like God is speaking to me right now. And so just to be invited to actually do that myself, for myself was just such an amazing, just gift. And then obviously those 2 letters, are my book. I mean, that's really the core of what motivated me. Just the ability to be honest and open and vulnerable with people, but also to kind of share what God is really trying to speak into us. But, sometimes we don't hear because of, those whispers are really loud because they kind of just echo in your head, and you don't always hear, that still small whisper of God who's affirming what, is true. And so, it's beautiful. I read that and I was like, that is what my book was all about in the first place. That's why I wrote it. That's why I came out. Because one of the steps was actually to have to go and tell people, yes, I'm writing a book on body image because I had an eating disorder, and you didn't know that the whole time, which was it was hard. It's I had to tell my parents, they were there, they watched it, they didn't know what was happening. I did a really good job of hiding it, but it did make my mom think, go back and think, what was going on at these different times, during my life, and I had to be honest with, Andrew's family and just open up. But it's been such a rewarding experience because you feel so alone when you're going through it. You can't envision the fact that there are other people in the world who are experiencing potentially almost the exact same thing that you're going through. But absolutely, that's another lie too. It's because the devil wants us to feel alone. We are made for communion. We're made to share these things, and he wants us to believe that we're the only one experiencing it, so that we won't go out and seek communion with other people and support and help. So
absolutely. In St. Ignatius's Discernment of Spirits, he always talks about look at the fruits of what your actions are, and if the fruit is leading you towards communion, towards a stronger prayer life, towards God, towards deeper relationships with other people, it's good. If those thoughts are leading you towards isolation or towards keeping yourself in the darkness, that's the fruit of untrue paradigms, untrue thoughts. For me, I love the letter writing exercise too. I think that's so beautiful. And for me, a lot of my healing happened in this one beautiful moment where a friend brought to me this Bible verse that I'd never read before. I didn't really read the Bible because I'm a good Catholic.
You're such a good Catholic. You sit in the back of church too.
It's terrible. I read the Bible now. I do. I've read the Bible now for years, but at the time I just heard the Bible at Mass, and I never actually opened it and read it. But my friend did, and thank God, because she brought me. I had told her about a lot of the struggles that I was going through with these untrue paradigms, and she brought me Song of Songs, chapter 4, verse 9. It's beautiful. You have stolen my heart, my sister, my bride, with one glance of your eyes, with one jewel of your necklace. Something about that just captures something so essential about how God sees us, right? We take his breath away without even having to do anything.
Yeah, it's just that you are.
Yeah, I don't have to do 60 minutes on the elliptical and finish up with weights. in order to be good enough for God, and I don't have to eat a salad and only a salad every day to be good enough for God. I actually take his breath away just with a glance of my eyes.
Yeah.
That's wild. Do I see myself that way? You know, honestly, I need reminders all the time. Do you see yourself that way? Like, do we all see ourselves that way or think of ourselves that way? It totally shifted how I had been thinking of myself and how I've been judging myself. I think I started laughing and crying at the same time, and I felt like I was floating on a cloud for like weeks after that, just to understand that the whole time this system of good, bad morality, like related to food and like making sure that I hit all these marks, like it was just fabricated, and I could look at it for what it was. So yeah, I hope that helps. I hope this whole conversation helps whoever's listening. I'm trying to think, because there's so much to say with body image, right? I'm like, did we leave anything out? Did we say something that we shouldn't have said? And I think, you know, if you're in that place, please don't be afraid to start sharing with the people who are close to you. Please don't be afraid to get help. There's only good things waiting on the other side for you, and God's going to bring people who are going to affirm you and help you and want you to get better as well.
Yeah.
Would you mind just finishing up with a quote from page 114 of your book?
But when we starve ourselves, punish ourselves with exercise, and treat our bodies like objects, we are rejecting one of the greatest gifts we have ever been given. When I really began to view my body as a gift from God to be treasured and respected, it changed everything for me. I couldn't starve myself without rejecting God's gift to me. I couldn't punish myself without ruining something that God really loved. Faced with the truth of God's love for all of me, including my body, as well as my own deep love for our Lord, I couldn't ignore the fact that when I critiqued and hated my body, I was critiquing and hating God. When I mistreated my body, I was mistreating God. When I belittled and disrespected my body, I was belittling and disrespecting God. I knew he didn't deserve to be treated like that, and neither did my body. I needed to abandon the lens of sin and learn how to see myself with the eyes of God. I needed to constantly remind myself that my body is a gift from God, and this flesh and blood that gives form to my soul, this body of mine, is the only body I will ever be given, and it is mine forever.
Thank you. Thank you for the gift of your book. It's beautiful, and I'm really excited to share it with everybody who wants to read it and needs to read it.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And again, if you're interested in buying my book, you can find it at www.ascensionpress.com/seeyourselfasgoddoes.
Yes!